Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's your favorite history teacher back at you again with another historical video. Today, from yesterday or a couple days ago, the Great Depression now follows the New Deal. So is it happy times? Is it back to normal? We shall see. So let's get into it. Let me share my screen. All right, chapter 24, the New Deal. You remember, this is how FDR got elected. His campaign slogan or his campaign promise was to give Americans a new deal with life, a new deal, period. Okay. So, I know it's a lot, but I mean, the New Deal is one of the more if you don't have a push multiple choice question about the New Deal, you might get it as an SAQ, you might get it as a DBQ. All right, the New Deal is a bit following the greatest economic collapse in our history. To have a president who serves almost 4 terms, served 3, to have him kind of get us back in line, it's fairly significant. So March 4th, 1993, we talked about that last time. FDR got inaugurated, and in his inauguration speech, he has that famous line, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." So you've been seeing this a lot with President Biden. A lot of presidents are how well they are going to, be a president is usually criticized. It's over amplified through their first 100 days in office. And in FDR's first 100 days of office, he passed a large amount of legislation. The New Deal focuses on the 3 R's. Put these to memory: relief, recovery, and reform. Relief, provide relief for individuals and families. Recovery, help improve the freaking economy because almost everyone's lost their money. And reform, getting new laws, protecting banks, and of course, child labor laws. Child labor was still around in the 1930s. Okay, and he did this. He will update the New York, the American people, because again, everyone has a radio at this point. Everyone has a radio in their home, in their office, in their car. Actually, I don't know about car. Don't quote me on that. Anyways, these are called fireside chats, where there are weekly radio addresses assuring the public that it was safe to put the money back in the banks. And, he talked at you and trying to, make America come together because everyone was affected by this. So let's come together and see how we can work on it and figure out things. And I'm your president, and I'm going to try and fix it. So remember when he got inaugurated, 1933 was the worst year for banks and bank closures. So FDR, first thing he does is give a bank holiday where he closed all the banks for days for Americans to calm their fears about the money and really de-stress the bankers and tellers. And then he created the Emergency Banking Act, where the government would inspect banks before they reopened. And that's fairly important because now they're going to make sure that they have these protocols, these systems in place that if they run out of money, or it would help them prevent from running out of money. And also what is important during this time is letting people drink. drink their sorrows away. The 21st Amendment is passed 1933, and that repeals the 18th Amendment or 17th Amendment prohibition. No, not the 17th Amendment, 18th Amendment. Get out of here, Mr. Obaye. You can't think. Okay, that's FDR signing legislation. I have to sneeze, trying to hold it in. Okay, so a lot of his legislation is kind of called the alphabet soup of programs, the alphabet soup laws, whatever you want. If you ever hear the term alphabet soup, it's usually about FDR and his New Deal programs. You have the AAA, or the Agricultural Adjustment Act, where they paid farmers not to grow crops because, hello, there was too much in supply. And it also, there was a lot of beef in supply, a lot of bacon, a lot of pork. So he paid farmers to not grow crops, and as well as to slaughter their own animals. And the government would pay them to kill their animals. It would later be declared unconstitutional in the court case Butler versus the United States. Next, you have the NIRA, or the NARA, NRA, not NARA, NAR. The NRA, not what the NRA stands for today. It was the National Industrial Recovery Act, which created the National Recovery Administration, NRA, NIRA, speaking too fast. And it set minimum wages and maximum hours, and they wanted to spread employment around, getting more people to work. You can't work more than 30, 40 hours, so you could hire more workers. It also gave rights to labor unions under Section 7A, which is collective bargaining, which is good for unions. And the NRA outlawed yellow dog contracts, which means employees that get hired could sign an agreement not to join a union. That was not allowed anymore. It outlawed that. But it would come to a halt as in the court case Schechter versus the United States, where it ultimately was, I think this is also called the sick chicken case. And if you extra credit, let's offer extra credit. What happened? What is the court case Schechter versus the United States? I would say it, but I want you to look it up. Why was it deemed unconstitutional? Okay. Anyways, it was declared unconstitutional. The NRA was declared unconstitutional, and legislative powers could not be delegated to the president. That's one of the main reasons. You have the PWA, Public Works Administration, which provided industrial recovery and unemployment, and they built the Grand Coulee Dam. And then you have the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, where hydroelectric power could be a huge source of energy. So the TVA helped reform monopolies in the area and provided jobs, and actually revitalized the Tennessee Valley area. And also encouraged hydroelectric development in other areas as well. The world of hydro. So this is the Tennessee Valley and the NRA. Okay, more. So about the stonk market and banks. First, you have the Glass-Steagall Act, which set up the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, I think that's what it stands for, guaranteeing individual bank deposits. So now you see this everywhere. If you go into banks, you will see the logo of FDIC. That the FDIC is still around today, people. You have the Truth in Securities Act, which brokers could not lie about the soundness of stocks. And if you lie about it, that's illegal. And just think of the Wolf of Wall Street and all the other. You couldn't lie saying the stock was more than it really was. That would be illegal. You have the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC, which regulated the stock market, and it became the watchdog of the NYSE, New York Stock Exchange. More works programs. The CWA, the Civil Works Administration, provided temporary jobs during a harsh winter. And then you have the CCC, almost one of the more famous of the alphabet soups. The CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, and they are government camps for young men to go out and reforest. These are all outdoor things. So reforestation, firefighting, anything that you could, building bridges, building dams, CCC, that's where it be. Here's a picture of the CCC laying down some brick foundation outdoors. If you see pictures outdoors during this time, primarily going to be the CCC. And then you also have the FDIC, and here you go. You should see this emblem in banks today, meaning, so if a bank loses money, you will be guaranteed payment from the federal government, ensuring the money you deposit in the banks, you would get that back by the federal government. How they would get that money? Who knows? Hasn't happened yet. Knock on wood. Okay, so now we're going to have some critics of the New Deal, because it can't just all be fairy tales, unicorns, and Lucky Charms. Okay, people are going to criticize FDR, and they are known as demagogues. And you kind of need to know this, and it kind of sounds like a former president, if I might say so myself. But a demagogue is someone who appeals to a people based on popular desires and wants rather than using rational arguments. So you have a man named Dr. Francis Townsend. He kind of appealed to senior citizens, and he wanted to create a plan for pensions for individuals over 60. Man, do I got to sneeze. And he's going to help inspire the Social Security Act, where give elderly people $200 a month, and then they have a promise to spend that $200 a month, because when you put more money in the economy, the more cash flow, it's gonna better the economy, right? If there's money involved. If there's no money, it kind of stagnates, You have another man named Father Charles Coughlin, and he had one of the largest radio audiences in America, and he wanted to reform the banking system. And then you have another man named Huey Long, governor and senator from Louisiana, and he's going to promote this plan of sharing the wealth, where money would be provided if the government would tax the wealthy and redistribute that wealth. You have the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, or it was created under the Wagner Act, which was a huge boost to the labor movement. And since the NRA was kind of declared unconstitutional, this kind of reassured unions the ability to collectively bargain. Pretty important. So you have another man, he's not a critic, and the NLRB is not a critic either. But John C. Lewis formed the Committee for Industrial Organization, the CIO, and he was a big labor person there. And then you have General Motors. A big strike is going to happen during this time, where General Motors and the workers sit in and allowed strike breakers, not allow strike breakers to work. They sat in, and the federal government did not intervene, but GM finally came to their senses and gave in to the workers. So here you got Joseph Coughlin. No, Townsend. Townsend's on the left, Coughlin on the right, and this is Huey Long. All right, so another big act is the Social Security Act. Social Security Act of 1935. So if your parents or grandparents, great-grandparents have received Social Security, you've heard the term Social Security, this is where it comes from, all right? And it's provided federal state unemployment insurance, provided money for senior citizens, disabled, retired, and they also, the money was collected by creating a new payroll tax. So that's how you're able to get paid after you retire. And then you have another organization, the WPA, Works Project Administration, not to be confused with the PWA, the WPA, and they will spend $11 billion on buildings, bridges, roads, everything. And 9 million people were put back to work during this time, during the WPA. Most aid for men came in the form of work relief. Remember how if you were unemployed during this time, it was seen as a failure. It was emasculating. You were seen as a big fat phony, a big fat failure, okay? And they got relief by working. Sure, they got paid, but they have a sense of a job, right? And women received cash during this time. In the 1936 election, FDR wins in a total landslide. FDR is a Democrat, BT dubs. And the CIO and other labor groups contributed to large amounts of money for FDR's campaign trail. And you'll see this electoral map. Your boy won all the states except 8 electoral votes. That's what we call a landslide, a very lopsided landslide. Okay, New Deal in disarray. So like I said, it's not all, peaches and cream. It's not unicorns and fairy dust. There's some problems. As we saw earlier, some acts, some programs were overturned, declared unconstitutional. In 9 New Deal cases, 7 were overturned. And this is going to halt FDR's his plan for progress. Can't get those words out. And, if every time FDR comes up with something new, it gets overturned by the Supreme Court, he's going to start thinking, I need to get rid of this Supreme Court. Remember, Supreme Court justices serve for life. All right? They serve for life. And he's going to have a proposal because the Supreme Court in this picture, very old looking men, bar for the crappy picture I have, pixelated, but they are very old. And so he wanted to have a judge be appointed for every justice over the age of 70. And this is known as his court packing plan. And it is going to fail tremendously. Congress, his party, Republican Party, don't matter. And the American public did not want this because now changing Supreme Court justice, the Supreme Court is already at 9. If you appoint a new judge for every judge over 70, you could have up to 15 new judges. That's crazy. Nothing will get done, if you ask me. Not that anything does get done, So they didn't like this. The American public did not like this, and there was a fear of the American public that FDR was kind of they thought that he was going to try and be a dictator. But then he passes then the court will come around to it once they see what he's actually trying to do. So he's got to be a little more specific in his legislation. And then you have the Fair Labor Standards Act, which was minimum wage and a 40-hour work week and limited child labor. So let's talk about how it affected other people than white people. African Americans, 90% of African Americans voted Democratic during this time because they were given jobs, but they still had little rights. Poll taxes still existed, and poll taxes are you have to pay a tax in order to vote just because the color of your skin. But, you know, the 14th and 15th Amendment were supposed to get rid of that, right? There was segregation in the CCC. African Americans had to live in separate tents, separate areas. So, like, even though it sounds great, there was still segregation in these programs and relief works administrations. And blacks were paid less than whites. You have the Indian Reorganization Act 1934, where FDR would give a, quote, New Deal for natives, and it kind of reverses the Dawes Act, where the Dawes Act gave 160 acres for each family who agreed to assimilate to American culture. Yeah, it reversed that, but it gave tribal land back. And women in the New Deal, again, women not going to gain. I'm not going to say the women's suffrage movement kind of hurt. I mean, women already have suffrage. What am I kidding? Women's equal rights, you know, there's still people around during this time that felt that women should not work, especially if their hubby, their husband, their spouse had a job. And they shouldn't work during these tough times, because if it's a job that women could do, it's a job that a man could do, and you're taking away a man's job. It's very misogynist, very sexist, I know, but it's what it was. Anywho, you have a famous woman named Frances Perkins. She was the first female cabinet member. She was a Secretary of Labor. She was FDR's brain trust, part of his cabinet, that he wanted people to disagree with him so he could come up with, I'm not saying he's going to go out and straight up hire Francis Townsend or Father Coughlin, but he's going to hear people who kind of have those similar thoughts, and he's going to want to hear their ways so he can try and reorganize how he could give better legislation for Congress to pass. Okay, and there's Frances Perkins. All right, last slide. The New Deal did not challenge the prevailing racial norms, like I just said. There were segregation in CCC camps, and whites got more money than African Americans, minorities. The West will benefit from the New Deal and the need for improvement and money, including dams, especially the Grand Coulee Dam, which was the largest public project in the history until that point. The South did benefit, with the TVA helping them out. And the New Deal impacts, great to know, you need to know. The government increased their power and the role of the federal government, and it was the beginning of the welfare state. And it will only be strengthened under future President Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society, because everyone is now with the New Deal, everyone's going to try and make their own plan, their own doctrine, as we'll see later after World War II. But there you go. So yeah, that concludes our lecture for today. Fairly short, fairly fast, fairly quick, but very important. Okay, not only was the Great Depression lecture fairly important, the New Deal is probably more important, just saying. So yeah, if you like that, make sure you smash that like button for your boy. And as always, stay safe, wash your hands. Peace.